The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Susan Sweeney, one of the deans at eLearningU, and I'd like to welcome you to today's program, How to Use Instagram Stories to Humanize Your Brand. For anybody that's new on our call, we go for about 50 minutes of great content, and then we have about 10 minutes of Q&A, sometimes a little bit more of one, a little bit less of the other. But so we go for 50 minutes, have with great content, then we have 10 minutes of Q&A. And we do our questions one of two ways. You can type your question in the question area as we go along, and I'll read those questions out to our expert, Karlyn Williams, today. Alternatively, if you'd like to speak directly to Karlyn to get your question answered, wait till we're in the Q&A time period and then click on that little hand symbol. It will light up on my screen and let me know that you want me to unmute you. So I'll give you a little heads up. I'll call you by your first name. I will then unmute you. You'll be able to speak to Karlyn to get your question answered. She'll answer your question. Everybody can hear the question and everybody can hear the answer. And once your question's been answered to your satisfaction, I will then mute you again and we'll go on to the next question. Karlyn has provided us with a PDF. It's in the handouts area, but don't go there yet. It's still uploading 24%. So I'm doing that at the last minute. So just give that a few minutes and then you can drag and drop that to your desktop or download it and save it. So our expert today, Karlyn Williams. Karlyn is the founder and lead strategist at OSnap Social, managing the company's client base while overseeing all social media strategies, artistic creation, content marketing, implementation, and metrics. Backed by a bachelor's degree in journalism, during the past 8 years in the social media industry, Karlyn has seen platforms come, go, and grow, making her well-versed in what it takes to get noticed in this noisy online world with content that converts. Karlyn, so happy to have you with us today and really looking forward to your program.
I appreciate you having me as well, Susan. Welcome, everybody. I hope you're ready to dig in on some tactical strategies around Instagram stories and how to humanize your brand utilizing this tool. So we will just dive right on in here. All right, so quick facts about Instagram stories. It was actually added to the Instagram platform August of 2016. There are 500, probably more than that now, 500 million daily active users. What that means is 500 million people are using Instagram stories, whether they are uploading their own or viewing them themselves as well. Those lurkers, we all have that in us, right? Stories feature, it allows you as a user to take videos, share photos, add effects via some layers and stickers, and publish them to your followers in 15-second clips, which is the important thing to note here. Finally, you can upload images to the user's story, but they expire in 24 hours. So if anyone's privy to Snapchat, heard about Snapchat, they basically swiped Snapchat's original intel there and brought it over to Instagram. The swipe up feature is only available to users with 10,000 or more followers. So you might have, unless you're running an advertisement on Instagram. So you might have seen this from larger influencers, travel influencers, for example, and they have the swipe up feature to go check out their blog post on their last trip to Mykonos, for example. That is available for people that have 10,000 or more followers. I think they're going to be starting to roll that out here in a little bit too more. But there is a swipe up feature that we'll dig into a little bit later when we talk about Instagram stories and how it relates to IGTV. So the audience demographic does tend to skew younger, so millennials and younger, as well as maybe some more influencer-based icons in pop culture kind of utilize that a lot as well. So let's break down the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why. And we're going to talk a little bit about the how. So first up is who. Who is our audience? I want you to give them a name. So we have Traveling Tony, we have Adventurous Amy, we have Outdoorsy Owen. couldn't find a picture of outdoorsy Owen, and regal Rachel. I want you to really picture them in your mind. What are their behaviors? And so by giving your platform, right, this is marketing 101. A lot of you probably already know this or have your audience already developed and written down. I really want you to visualize them as it relates to your Instagram, because your Instagram audience might be very different than your Facebook audience, right? So I really want you to take that into consideration when you're creating Instagram stories, because you really need to make sure that you are relating to them, being human to them, showing up for them in your content that you're creating for stories. So speaking of content, what are some different types of content that we can put on Instagram stories? So I like to break it up into different content buckets. In a little bit, I'm going to have you brainstorm your own. So bear with me as we kind of get through the kind of overarching topics that we can use for our content buckets. So we have around the neighborhood, and these are just sample ideas. User-generated influencers, fans, so content that maybe your fans already create that you can share. Service showcase, so what do you do, how do you do it, and how can you share about those different items and services. Behind the scenes, this is everyone's favorite, especially when it comes to Instagram stories. It allows your user or visitor or audience person to really take that peek behind the curtain and see really what makes your brand tick. So let's start first around the neighborhood. So this is an actual screenshot that I took I think it was last week, of Visit Alexandria, Virginia. So I am from the DC area. I'm from Fairfax, Virginia. I visit Old Town Alexandria pretty often, but this is a screenshot that they started their video story with, their Instagram story with, that shared all about this Insta meetup. So this is a great idea if you manage any type of shopping center or larger event. How can you invite influencers that have a large following on Instagram to your event and do stories and do posts and get exposure for your event and for themselves, right? Because they're always going to be in the mindset of what's in it for me, okay, in terms of the influencer side. So you can see in this eye-catching graphic, they took a photo that actually IGDC, you can kind of see the tag, I don't know if my cursor will show up, down here at the bottom. So they took an image that was already promoting their Insta meetup and shared it on their stories. They tagged the location, they told us what day it was, and the stories after that shared, so this was like later at night, the next day they shared all about the event. They took photos of the influencers' feeds and their stories and shared it to their story. So it's really this place to be, I know this sounds crazy, but social on social media. So we really want to make sure that we're kind of connecting all those dots, and by showcasing your neighborhood in a way that highlights influencers and highlights your neighborhood, that would be awesome. And by neighborhood, I don't mean literally neighborhood. It can be your hotel or your resort or behind the scenes at your shopping center, whatever the tourism piece is, that's definitely a place to showcase that. So they are really great at showcasing their area charm. There's local restaurants you can feature, local events, things to do. This can help you grow those local partnerships and generate referrals between you. So like I said, they showcased, it was Three Sisters. It's a boutique shop, and they actually had people from their store come down to this mirrored art display by the waterfront and take photos showcasing Old Town and showcasing their boutique at the same time. So how can you cross promote? How can you work with other people in your industry or influencers in your area to really ramp up and amplify the events that you're already doing? So that's around the neighborhood, giving a glimpse of your surroundings. User-generated influencers and fans. Now I kind of touched on this in the last content bucket because all of this does kind of cross-pollinate, right? So this is Taza. She is a big-time mom blogger. I feel like she's the OG of mom blogging. She has 5 children. These are her 2 twins here. She is a great one. She's always traveling. She has sponsorships, but she has a huge following of moms just like her, right? So this is a screenshot from one of her stories. She shared a photo from her grid, meaning the main profile, onto her stories and had a call to action which says more in this caption. So think about how you can repurpose your content on your story. So maybe you're already posting an amazing photo around the neighborhood. Maybe it's, you know, I think on June 7th, it was like National Donut Day, right? And maybe there's a boutique donut shop down the street from your hotel or, you know, company. And you wanted to share that, you wanted to tag them, and you put it in your grid. Now, how can you share it out to your stories and tag them there to kind of get more juice out of that content line, if that makes sense? So finding customers and fans, local people in the area who hashtag or tag your location or place of business, and you can share their content from their experience. However, one caveat, always get permission before sharing. So a great example, I'll go back to the donut shop example. There is a highly sought after donut shop. They sell out in our area every single weekend. And people are constantly sharing, you know, the foodies of the world are sharing that all over their Instagram because they are beautiful donuts. And they made their whole shop very Instagrammable, if that makes sense. They have backdrops and all that fun stuff. People are tagging it. And basically their customers and fans are doing the content work for them. And they know to tag a particular hashtag. They know to @mention or tag the company's your username from Instagram in their content for a chance to be featured. So, and how you get permission to do that, to share it on stories or share it even in your grid, is just simply asking. You can go in the comments as your business and say, hey, this is an amazing photo. Would you mind if we shared it? We would tag you, of course. And most 9 times out of 10, they'll say, of course. And there are some, you know, some companies are more regulated than others. I typically screenshot that permission and I save it. Some people do that and then they kind of go a layer deeper by offering that person a photo release form. But that again is just for the highly regulated. But I just want to say that as a caveat because people kind of do that differently depending on your industry and your company. So the next piece of content, kind of this other content bucket, is service showcase. So this is, I'm not even going to try to say it. This is a resort in Bora Bora. They have amazing, dreamy photos. This is one I just took from one of their stories, actually it's from one of their highlights, and we'll go into what a highlight is in a minute. But they are showing kind of different aspects of their resort, right? It's not just beach and this beautiful ocean and the overwater bungalows, right? It's more than that. It's creating those different experiences. So this type of content, again, aims to promote the different offerings within your neighborhood, hotel, resort, cruise line, ships, restaurant, whatever it is. It really aims to kind of differentiate you. What else do you offer besides maybe what's kind of on the surface of your website? How can you give them that kind of peek behind the curtain and see what we're setting up for this evening, which is a full moon dinner, right? That's an amazing experience that not everyone's going to be able to get, but man, how cool would that be? Because you can almost like picture yourself there, right? You can see, you know, the way they even constructed this photo was pretty smart because you look at it and you're like, I can picture myself sitting in that chair, right? So I really want you to think about different things that maybe an audience person just looking at your grid might not know about, or they go to your website and they may not know about, but capturing those real time in the moment photos and then sharing them with your audience in a story fashion will give them that relatability and that closeness to the feel that they start to really get to know your brand and who you are, right? It's all about being relatable and sharing experiences with people. Again, yep, I just kind of said that's a great way to share what makes your brand, company, guest experience different from others. Now, everyone's favorite, which is behind the scenes. I took this screenshot from Marriott Bonvoy. I think it might have actually been on Marriott's main Instagram page, but this was taken from the DC Capitol Pride Festival that happened last week. And you can see, and this was actually a boomerang with, they were like waving the flags, which was super engaging and cool. And they were just showcasing, you know, some of their staff, which is a great way to kind of, from a corporate lens, you can share staff spotlights, you can do brand core values, events you're attending, conferences your CEO or other people in your C-suite team are speaking on stage. Because again, it's all about hitting the different content silos, and giving faces behind the brand is super, super important. Now, if you're a solopreneur in the tourism space, I expect to see you traveling. I expect to, you know, if you are someone that is a travel agent, for example, I'm going to want to know your top tips, you know, your top tips for traveling on a cruise ship, right? So I'm going on my honeymoon on a cruise in September. I want to learn from travel agents, what are the must-haves to pack that like everyone forgets, right? I want that content. I need that content because it's relatable to me and my current situation. So sharing that day in the life content, sharing stories, expert tips, really think outside the norm and concentrate on providing value to your audience. And again, a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. And if you're not comfortable being on camera, there are different ways and different tools that we'll get into that can create amazing graphics and text and all that fun stuff to share your expertise in that way. Another way to show behind the scenes content is takeovers. So though this is in a different industry, a hiring firm, for example, they have an employee every Tuesday do a takeover, Tuesday takeovers, and they share day in the life content from their lens, right? Start to finish, from when they wake up, what they eat for breakfast, what they do at work, if meetings they're having, you know, the lunch they're eating in the neighborhood, to maybe they're going to an after work event, right? Now, you kind of got to be, you know, you got to be smart about these takeovers. I highly suggest having someone, if you are thinking about doing this or integrating this into your Instagram story strategy, I highly suggest that you get that content from the individual that's, quote, taking over your Instagram ahead of time. And then you can do your due diligence of trickling it out over the day. That's one way to do it. If it's someone on your team, then maybe you can give them the login credentials, but I know that's kind of a, you know, an iffy point there for many. So there's two ways of doing those takeovers for the day. You know, it gives those followers and fans that kind of different perspective and different lens. So I highly suggest doing that. I think it's a great way for someone to experience a, quote, unbiased experience for your brand. Also, behind the scenes is the most fun content to create anyway, right? It can be off the cuff, it can be super fun. People want to see your faces and the faces of people that you work with or people that you're meeting with every single day. So don't be afraid to do that. Now it's time to brainstorm your own buckets. So I want you to set up your paper similar to this. So you have two lines going down the page and one going across. So you have 3 different thematic buckets. And I want you to just right now, while I'm kind of talking, write stream of consciousness, all the different things that you can put in your content buckets. You can even utilize the same buckets that I had, but it's going to be different based on your industry or specific niche within the industry. So if you're a hotel, right, maybe one of your buckets is about conferences and events. Maybe people don't know as much because you don't promote it as much, that people can host conferences and events at your space. So one thing could be promoting people or promoting that this is a service, showing behind the scenes of maybe your event planner or meeting planner, talking about the different added benefits of having her on your team rather than going somewhere else. You could show behind the scenes of the event staff working hard prior to the event, all the way through putting the event on, right? And then having a testimonial at the end of the day from that corporate partner or nonprofit that hosted the event, and you guys helped make a tremendous success. So that's something that people, I think, don't do too often and should do more of, is getting those like real in the moment feedback, testimonials, because you did an amazing job, for example, at creating this amazing experience for this event, and you made that company look amazing. So how can you share that in real time to your entire audience from no other than someone that hired you to help them, right? It's all about tooting your horn, getting other people to share it, and think of you and keep you top of mind at all times in real time. Okay, so I hope that you are brainstorming feverishly. I'm gonna be quiet for like a minute for a second. Let me see if there's other themes we can dive into. If you're a beach resort, it could be top beach things to do. Like, so if you're in Myrtle Beach, for example, top things to do in Myrtle Beach this summer, that could be a whole theme by itself. That's where you can kind of share around the neighborhood content. And I'm just kind of brainstorming out loud here. But there's no wrong answer, because honestly, anything is content in the right context. And you always want to keep your audience top of mind when you're creating this content. Don't just create it for the sake of creating it, right? Think about it from a strategic standpoint and test and tweak. So if you have never done an Instagram story, it might take a little while to have that rhythm going, right? So I really want you to take the time after this call gets finished to really brain dump. Get all those things out and on paper, and then start to organize them after. But at least they'll be organized in these 3 or more buckets. So when do we do this? Well, we want to make sure that we are showing up consistently. So what does that mean? It means picking a schedule and sticking to it. So if you're like, every Tuesday we're doing a takeover, awesome. Make sure you have that lineup done. Maybe Friday, and this can be all internal. Friday is Fan Friday, that's where you share maybe the awesome user-generated content that you got permission to use in your stories, and tag those people every Friday, so your fans can kind of see themselves in the shoes of people that have already experienced your brand. In real time, now that I kind of mentioned this earlier, having it be live and in real time, so maybe you're at a conference for travel agents, for example. Share the people you're meeting, share behind the scenes, make sure you're tagging the hotel or convention center that it's at, making sure that you're tagging the event hashtag where appropriate. And something that I've noticed is in some, not all, but in some conferences, they forget to, 1, create a hashtag, or 2, don't put it everywhere. So you want to make sure that you are using the right hashtag to get found, but also just ask an event organizer or someone on staff to, if you can't find it readily in the program or on, step and repeats, things like that, that you're asking, because you might as well kind of toot their horn and toot your own. So next is, you could share things at a later date. Now, if it makes you nervous to kind of point the phone and publish something right away, what I've done, especially throughout my day, and I have a busy day, I will collect videos and photos or graphics from an event, or from, maybe I have an existing asset library somewhere, and string them together in stories later. So maybe I wanted to, going back to the example of someone giving their top tips for first-time cruise line guests. I don't know if they're called cruisers, but I'm here for that. I like that. You can create photos and graphics using a tool like Canva in a format that is ready for Instagram story size. So it's already in that vertical format, and you can create that story ahead of time and then upload it for the day. So that's super easy, because you can create different slides, almost like a PowerPoint slide. You know how I have these kind of bullet points? You can create a graphic that maybe has this, and the next one is this plus this, and then the next one is these plus, etc. And by doing that, you don't have to be on screen. You're still giving value. It's something that you can prepare ahead of time, especially if you're having a very busy day, and still give value to your audience. Definitely think about that too when you're coming up with content, or you know, how can you take that blog post and break it down into an Instagram story and then tell people to go read the full blog post with the link in your bio, right? Just making sure that there indeed is telling a story. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. Just don't do one and done. That doesn't tell me a story. That just promotes one thing. I want more. Most people want to stick around for at least, I think, 5 to 7. Oh yeah, so pro tip, 5 to 7 clips. 15-second clips is great standard to shoot for until you get comfortable. That said, you can go beyond. There's no rule to how many. Just make it short and snappy, because otherwise people will just keep fast forwarding and tapping to get through your story if it's too long. It might be cumbersome to people. So I think 5 to 7 is a good rule of thumb there. And most important, again, find your flow and stick to it. Pick a schedule. You got this. Now where? So most of everything that you need to create a successful Instagram story exists in the Instagram app, which is great news for us. The less tools, the better. So Instagram stories definitely lend themselves to more in the moment and not fancy content. It's all about being authentic and real and not overly produced. Now, with that said, you have to find a balance between like what your brand voice, tone, and a brand visual identity is with how you want to treat Instagram stories. I know that sometimes is tricky for larger, especially tourism brands, because they do have a level of visual identity that needs to be upheld in its entirety, including stories. But how can you find that fine line between creating in the moment real content, sharing other people's content of your experience, of their experience within your brand, while still maintaining that level of identity that is accustomed and essential for brand awareness. So that's definitely something to maybe brainstorm, troubleshoot with others at your company, because being more human, because 80% of people right now are shopping around, that a lot of them are not brand loyal. So giving them that more humanized element, doing a video selfie style, if you're the marketing manager, for example, for Marriott, you could be on the beach at your new location, sharing the beach at your new location rather than it just being the beach at your new location. I hope that makes sense. So you can also create, and I think I just talked to you about this, but you can create custom Instagram stories using the following tools located right on your phone. So you can do graphics in Canva. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. There's also, if you have a graphic designer on your team, that they can use Photoshop with the proper Instagram story dimensions. But Canva just makes it quick and easy. And they have auto template ready to go for stories. They also allow you to import your brand logo as well as your brand fonts and hexadecimal color codes. So you should be all set from a branding perspective in there. I believe those features are offered with the pro version of Canva, which I think is $12 a month or something. Then also there's the phone on your camera, right? I always dare you, please record a selfie mode videos and share them to your stories. If your brand won't let you do that right now, or your company, definitely try it for yourself, have some fun with it, share some value, share behind the scenes, because that's what people relate to. They don't relate to overly produced content anymore. They just don't. Because we are advertised to all day long, and the last thing we want to do is see another advertisement. But if it's someone that we've grown to know, like, and trust, who gives us value day in and day out over on Instagram stories or in their blog or, you know, Facebook Lives or anything like that, we tend to pay attention to those people even more. There's also the Instagram app, which is loaded with tools and filters and stickers and text options, though you can't upload your own fonts there. And more. I mean, you can add your message, you can add your personality to the stories right there within the Instagram app. So, and going into the why, and I also just touched on this, I feel like I'm a little bit ahead of my slides here, but it's all about being more human so you can build authentic relationships with your fans. So you're turning those looky-loos, those lurkers of the world into lifelong loyal fans and customers. So I dare you to step in front of the camera. People buy from people, not logos, right? So, I mean, I think the one example, and I've heard this from marketing pioneer Mark Schaefer, there's Ivory Soap dominated the advertising space in the soap operas. That's why it's called soap operas, the daytime TV, because Ivory Soap definitely dominated. Now, he was telling a story to at one of his talks where he went into his friend's home who was an avid fan of Ivory Soap, but he went into her bathroom to wash his hands and the Ivory Soap was not on the counter. And he's like, what happened to the Ivory Soap? And she said, in its place, there was a bar of soap that had, you know, was infused with like cocoa butter and I think it was like lime or something. She goes, it's not the soap that I love. It's the people that made the soap that I love, because their brand story for that soap, that fancy soap, was so strong as it gave back to the community that it was an absolute no-brainer for her to do business with that company, for her to buy that soap and go from something that has been a staple in her home to something new. So how can you create that experience for people? I mean, you guys are in the business of creating those top-notch experience for people. How can you get other people to talk about their experience, and how can you help others picture themselves in that experience because of the service that you all provide? So your company culture is your marketing, and sharing it can attract ideal customers and clients even better, future candidates for open job positions. So that kind of goes back to behind the scenes. So if you're more on the corporate level, there's definitely something that you can do to sharing your company culture throughout your stories. It can be part of your content mix for stories. If you are looking to hire specific types of people, again, millennials are always on Instagram, so that's a great market to be sharing that type of content in and showing the day in the life. And so people can start to build that more, that relatable bond with people on your team and people within your company and want to do more business with you because you take care of your people. Engage consistently to nurture your audience to convert as a customer. So it's just not enough to put out the content. You need to make sure that you're having that conversation. Again, going back to being social on social media. So if you're posting a story, ask a question, have them engage with some of the stickers, and we'll dig into that, what those look like in a minute. And a pro tip, consistency over time wins long-term, hands down. It's not put something up and expect, you know, 100 direct messages tomorrow, right? It takes consistency, it takes time, it takes people to notice, it takes people to engage. The more they engage, the more they relate, the more they relate, the more they buy, right? Awesome. So I touched on this, but repurposing is huge on social media, especially if you are a team of one or maybe a team of three, and you're in charge with doing all of the things on social media and marketing. So here's 3 different examples. There's La VDC, which is a restaurant. There's PDC Events, which is a event company that specializes in bar crawls, actually. And there is Mosaic District, which is a shopping center. And you can see that some of these, so like the Levy profile, it looks different than the rest of, or than the other 2. Instagram is rolling out a new profile format for people. So, but what I want you to pay attention here are the highlights. And the highlights are the places right underneath the bio. They're like little graphics. So in the Mosaic District one, they have dogs, fun, dine, shop, right? And then they have buttons, call, email. So what you can do is you can publish an Instagram story. Say it's, just going back to this example, top must-haves to pack for your cruise, right? You post that on your story one day, and technically it only lasts in your stories for 24 hours, right? You can then go to your archives, create so it's not gone forever, it's just gone to the public forever, unless you dump them into a highlight. So you can see on the La Vie DC restaurant example, they share content stories all the time around happy hours, around the different dessert options they have, around different beverage items they have. And in DC, you can promote happy hours. It's kind of, in Virginia, you cannot, just because of the regulations, but it gives the audience an easy way to find or take a sneak peek at their menu, at their offerings. What do they do? You know, what kind of drinks do they have? What do they look like? Livy also had and if I swiped to the left more, there are even more highlights included there as well, like, you know, views. I think they have a rooftop over the waterway in DC, which is amazing. So they're immersing people in their experience by kind of showing them clips, because people are shopping around for restaurants and experiences and places to spend their weekend. So you want to make sure that you get more juice out of the content in stories that you are pushing out there. And the highlights are a great way to repurpose that content. So another way to repurpose your content is to take the content that exists in your feed, and I touched on this a little bit, and add it to your story. And Instagram has amazing stickers and GIFs to utilize for people to encourage them to take action. So the one that says feed to stories, I took that purple box that you can kind of hardly see the outline to, and that's like an inspo quote that I shared. I shared it on my story on Sunday, and that by holding down the graphic, it allows someone to go directly to my profile. So it allows that call to action. So if people want to read what the rest of that says, they have to go to my profile to view it, and they can do so by holding it down and visiting my profile. Pretty easy. For IGTV, so this is an Instagram articles, do's and don'ts, Instagram TV, which is similar to YouTube, but I added this to my feed, and then I can share it to my stories and add a swipe up link to have them go to watch the rest of my video. So it goes from the preview in my feed, then I share the preview to my story, and then the story goes to my IGTV. A lot of digital connect the dots there. Okay, awesome. So here's the fun part. This is where I call it decorating your cake. It's super fun. So there's a ton of add-on features. So let's talk about the different tools that exist. You can see there the top menu bar of the IG stories. So we're gonna go from right to left. There's the save the story, so you can utilize it later. There's a filter, which is great for selfie style filming, or maybe you're having an interview with someone in front of your camera phone. That makes you look polished, or it can make you look like a dog. Very similar to the Snapchat features you've seen in the past. Link that's where you can add your IGTV video links. Unless you have 10,000 or more followers, as I mentioned before, you can link them to a blog post or a product or tickets to buy something for your event, etc. Stickers is the smiley face with the corner turned up. That's where all the good stuff is. We're going to dig deeper in the next slide on what those stickers are. That's where you can find gifts that relate. You can get geo tags, so tagging location. You can mention other people's Instagram handles. You can add hashtags. You can add, just emojis and a lot more. The pen there, you can write or draw with your finger, or you have like one of those fancy pens with a little stylus on the end. You can add some cool calligraphy there of your own. You can circle things. It's a lot of fun to experiment with that. And then finally is the text box, where you can add your own text. So breaking down the stickers feature a little bit more. So when you click on the smiley face with the turned up edge, you're going to find a geotag, which is really awesome, especially in the tourism space, because you want to get found in the area that you are. You can whittle it down to city, state. You can also whittle it down to physical location and even address in some cases. At mention, that's a great place to tag brands, to build those partnerships, and to share user-generated content in the correct way. Hashtag, it's really important to kind of find a balance here with hashtags. There's some that have over, hashtag coffee lovers, right? Has like 3 million people add that to their story, like probably every single day. So it's kind of finding a balance of the larger hashtags mixed with kind of the smaller ones. So if you want to get more information on how to kind of create a hashtag list for the different sectors of your brand, definitely willing to help with that and do some research around that. There's also GIFs, which is, honestly, this is one of my favorite features in stories. It just adds some movement to maybe some stagnant photos. So for example, maybe you're sharing that the pool just opened, right? Because it's summer. I'm so excited. You can add, there's a GIF, I think that it's like a swimmer swimming, and you can like put the GIF in the pool and kind of give that, static image some movement, which is kind of fun and shows a little bit of personality and creativity. Time, if the timestamp's important for your story, it's there, and it is auto fills in the time. So I took this screenshot at 4:50. Music, so for me, I don't know what happened to my music feature, but a lot of people do have them. I message Instagram every day because I want music, but some people have the music feature, which is great for setting a tone for your story. Poll, this is a great way to engage your audience, ask this or that questions, yes or no questions, and to gather their opinions. So that's the sticker right here. The slider poll, this is simply engaging. So if you had, going back to that one image I shared of that moonlight full moon dinner, they could have added some engagement to that by adding this slider here and put it on there to get engagement, to see where, most people are gonna love something like that, but it ups your engagement, gets you kind of more found. There's also countdown, which is great to add prior to an event, or countdown to our grand opening, or countdown to, I don't know, any event that's happening on property. That would be countdown to our next cruise, anything like that, super fun. Countdown to until you go live on Instagram, anything like that you want to promote. Quiz, this might be fun to test your audience. And also some people are using it to test their knowledge about their personal brand, which is pretty interesting. If you're running a fundraiser event, they just added, it's not featured in this screenshot, but they just added a donation feature on here. So you can add a donation sticker to your story and people can donate money right there, which is pretty powerful. It's a great way if you're running a fundraiser, a physical fundraiser in one space, it's a great way to kind of extend and amplify that reach on digital. And then of course, you can add photos on photos, which is that little camera down on the bottom right. And then you can add temperature as well, if that is important for your brand to add. So I'm sure that was a little bit like drinking from a fire hose, but just to recap everything that we just talked about, it's all about knowing who your audience is first, give them, really picture them in your mind, and think about how your brand, yourself, or your company talks to that person and how they are expecting you to show up on Instagram. Develop a content mix. So that's where we had those 2 vertical lines and 1 horizontal line, and we developed those different content buckets, and I gave you some ideas for that. And then implementing it with authentic photos and videos of you or your team doing things behind the scenes to build that relationship with your audience. It's really about being relatable to people, because again, people buy from people that they know, like, and trust. They do not buy from logos. It's also important for your strategy to show up consistency, because social media is a long-term game. And you have to be patient, and you have to be willing to to put yourself out there to test and tweak until you find the secret sauce that relates with your brand and audience. And then finally, you want to make sure that you're taking that one piece of content and just repurposing it within the Instagram platform itself. Sure, you can repurpose it other places, but you can republish or repurpose it like 3 different ways within Instagram itself. And then finally, have some fun, decorate it with some add-on features, and get found. So you're definitely going to want to always add hashtags, and you can definitely always add geo tags and location. And searching for other people that are utilizing that hashtag, especially if you have a brand hashtag, as well as people that are tagging your location of your business in their content, because that right there is gold. Because if it's an amazing Instagram worthy photo that your brand wouldn't mind sharing, it allows your audience to really open up and relate to that person over something that the corporation or that logo even might be sharing. So definitely get found, have some fun, be creative. So if you want more, I have a free social media video guide for you. So if you're like, how long did she say Instagram stories are? How long can my IGTV stories be? What about in the grid? Can I post videos in the grid? What about so I answer all of those frequently asked questions I get around social media video, all in this video cheat sheet guide. And like Susan said, you'll be getting these slides with you. So you'll be able to type this into your URL. If you want more of a strategy, definitely schedule a strategy call with me. I love geeking out about this stuff and helping brands and individuals up-level their Instagram stories. And you know, if you enjoyed this presentation, I would love your feedback. You can also email me at hello@osnapsocial.com. So with that, Susan, I'll let you kind of take it from here. I think we're going into a Q&A portion, right?
Excellent. Yes, we sure are. Thanks, Karlyn. Fabulous presentation, by the way. For anybody that joined us late, we do our questions one of 2 ways. You can type your question in the question area. I will read those out to Karlyn. Alternatively, if you'd like to speak directly to Karlyn to get your question answered, just click on that little hand symbol on your in your control panel. It lights up on my screen, and I'll give you a heads up, let you know that I'm going to unmute you. I will. You talk to Karlyn, get your question answered. Everybody can hear the question. Everybody can hear the answer. And once your question's been answered to your satisfaction, I will then mute you again. We'll go on to the next question. Don't forget, the handout is now fully uploaded, so you can just drag and drop that or save as. And then you'll have a copy of the handout. Next week, we've got Bassam Galley on, on search engine optimization and getting to the top of Google without paying. But that's not the title, but it's something similar to that. Okay, so let's get into our questions. First question is, what is the best time of day to post Instagram stories?
I love this question. And unfortunately, there's no real one answer for this. It all goes back to knowing who your audience is and kind of understanding their behaviors. What does their daily life look like? So someone that's a millennial that maybe is, you know, working a full-time job is probably not on Instagram the entire day. So they might be on in the morning before they head in for work, or maybe when they first wake up. A lot of us don't sleep more than 6 feet away from our phone. So that might be the first thing they do in the morning. So publishing early, you could publish during lunch, would be great for that particular audience. And then late in the evening tend to be the best for that audience. But again, just figuring out your audience, who they are, really, I mean, think about their behaviors throughout the day and post accordingly, and then measure the eyeballs, measure the reach, measure the engagement on that piece of content, because you're, you know, even though we are like, okay, these are their behaviors, and maybe you did some market research for your audience as well, and they told you I'm on Instagram between, you know, 12 and 1 during my lunch break, that might not be the audience that's always on your follower list. So you just want to test and tweak consistently and measure your progress as you go. Great question.
Okay, great. Next question. Is there a place for contests in Instagram?
They're not placed for contests particularly, but you can run contests on your grid feed and share them like I showed you in your stories. There is some tricky language that you need to make sure that you include within your Instagram caption post for getting that acquired, but there's not, you can still do that. You just have to make sure that you include some disclaimers in there, and make sure that you're saying, especially if you're running an ad or you're doing a partnership with someone, making sure that you're including sponsored or partnership or ad or something like that, because we want to make sure that we're being as transparent as possible, because we don't want Instagram to, shut us down. So great question.
Okay. Next question. When other Instagram users include my organization in their stories, I don't often see them until after they've expired because, of course, they're only up for 24 hours. How do I track other users' stories when we're mentioned? And what should I do when others include my organization in their stories?
I would double check your notifications. I would make sure that you have your notifications turned on. So they're push notifications. So they show up. This might be annoying if you're the manager of this, but so that they show up on your main, when you get a text message, how you get a notification on your phone on that front lock screen, making sure that that's the same for your brand, to do that and make sure that's just getting monitored. You could also message that person back. You say like, thank you so much for tagging us in your story. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see it. Would you mind sharing, if you still have the photo, we'd love to see it. I mean, that way it's like, I realize that you shared it, you posted it in the middle of the night, but I'm not on your same time zone. I want to make sure that I see it, just to see that experience. Even if you can't share it, it still gives you that engagement with that person. And that way, whether that piece of content was in a good light or maybe in a not so good light.
Okay.
It happens.
Yeah, for sure. I'm new to Instagram. Is Instagram something I can tackle on my own, or should I outsource to a social media manager?
I think it could be both. Now, you can definitely outsource it to someone if you're completely time tapped. But at the very minimum, I think it's really smart to have an outside person work with you or your team to create a sound strategy, so that you're not just kind of posting willy-nilly, that there's actually some goals and key performance indicators tied to the content that you're creating for your brand. Not just on Instagram, but across the board on all of your social platforms. But with that, there are people like myself that can do the strategy piece, but there's also the done for you. So if you're completely time tapped and you're a team of one, it might be time to outsource some of that content creation piece, or that monitoring piece, monitoring of the story when you get mentioned, those types of things.
Okay, great. Next question. What kinds of things go into an Instagram strategy?
Oh man, so many things. Instagram strategy is going to be predominantly visual. So you want to make sure, as I mentioned earlier, that it's aligned with your overall brand identity. So that was agreed upon a corporate board or something like that. And you want to make sure that your audience is developed on Instagram, meaning you want to know who you're talking to. And then you want to make sure that you are creating kind of a do's and don'ts list. How do you communicate? How do you not communicate? What do you sound like? Are you fun, charismatic, or are you polished and buttoned up? Right? Those are two very different voices that you have on Instagram. Now, I know some people that are more buttoned up on Facebook, but on Instagram, because their audience skews more like towards the younger audience, their language is a little bit less formal and a little more loose, but still communicates the same brand value, if that makes sense. And then the strategy is all about creating those buckets too, those content buckets that we talked about. So then everyone on your team is on the same page.
Okay, great. The next question is, how many posts a day are optimal?
I would say once a day is a great goal to shoot for of accounts. But what I wouldn't do is flurry the feed. And by that, I mean, don't post 5 pictures of that same event at one time in separate posts. Create a story from that. That's a great way to solve that problem, but post 1 photo of that event, or you can do, I think up to 10 in the multiple photo post format, if that makes sense. You can add, 5 photos, but it'll show up as 1 post in your grid that people can swipe through, almost like a photo gallery. But that used to be something that used to drive me bonkers, when people would do, 5 photos all at one time, and it would flood my feed, and that really quickly earned them an unfollow. So be strategic, know your behaviors of your audience. You can try 1 in the morning and 1 at night and see which one performs better. I think that's a great tactic to start with, if you have that amount of content in your library to pull from. So 1 to 2 times a day, I think, is good.
Great. I'm down to 2 questions, so if anybody has anything they'd like to get asked during the program, please get it in now. Another one just came in. The next question is, are there programs that I can use to schedule posts to Instagram?
Yes. Instagram stories you can even schedule. I know for sure Sprout Social does Instagram story scheduling, and all the other social platforms. Other ones to look into, Agora Pulse is relatively new to the scheduling game, but it's a very simple user interface. And Hootsuite is another great one. And they all have pretty robust reporting as well.
Okay, great. Next question. I was told Instagram now lets users sell products within their posts. How does that work?
Mm-hmm.
How can I include a link in Instagram to sell tickets to an event I'm having?
Yes. So I would say majority of that is it links to Facebook for that product piece. I don't know if people have been using it for the ticket type of format, but they are making it so grid photos are shoppable. A great example that's doing that is like someone like Macy's, but I've only seen it on my feed, at least, and through my research, for product-based businesses. That being said, I'm sure they will be rolling out something that's more along the lines of kind of service-based or event tickets. In the meantime, what you can do is go to a tool that allows you to have multiple links within your bio. So something like Linktree, L-I-N, I gotta write it down, L-I-N, because it's kind of tricky, L-I-N-K-T-R .ee. There we go. LINKTR.ee. And that's a website that links to your Instagram. And if you put that custom link that you create into your Instagram bio, it'll allow you to have more than 1 link included in your bio. So you're not having to change it out every day you post a new thing.
Okay, great. Now, Tammy, you have your hand raised. I'm going to unmute you so you can speak directly. Okay, Tammy, you should be able to speak now.
How do you put like more than 1 picture? I know you said not to do a bunch of pictures where they show separately, but like if I wanted to do 2 pictures at a time, how do I do that?
Of course. So when you go to your main part of it, and it's hard without, if you have your Instagram open in front of you on your phone, this might help you a little bit more. So you hit the plus sign in the middle like you would typically add a photo. Okay. And you can, then it'll pull up like automatically like the most recent photo from your camera roll.
Right.
If you're in the library mode at the bottom. And then over on the photo, you'll see like an infinity symbol, like a grid, and then one that looks like 2 photos stacked on top of each other. It's like a little icon on the far right.
Right.
If you click that, you can select up to 10 different images to include in that like reel of that content post.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I
cool.
do as we're talking. So that is yay!
Yay, good. Yay. And you can you can reorder them. So they'll show up in that post as 1, 2, 3. Like 1 will be on the top, 2, 3, I believe. Yeah. And then after you click it, and you select the ones you want, that's where you can make the different editing changes. If you have a certain filter that you like to use to keep your brand consistent, that's where you can do that as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. You're welcome.
Okay, Tammy, I'm going to mute you again now. So we'll go on to the next question. The next one, is there an app to make your own highlight covers?
Well, not a specific app, but what you can use are the tools I mentioned. Canva is where I made mine. And I just found like icons within Canva's free graphics and just kind of put them over. But with your highlights, and this is a good point I forgot to mention, you have to upload them. Anything you want to appear in highlights, including the custom covers, they have to be in your story first in order to show up in your archives to then assign them to a highlight, if that makes sense. So it almost has to like be dumped into Instagram, so Instagram knows that the media item is there for them to grab and utilize as the cover image.
Okay. Thank you so much, Karlyn. That brings us, that's the end of our questions. Just a comment. Yes, awesome, thank you. So
Okay.
thanks, Karlyn, for a fabulous presentation. Really great.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And thanks everybody for attending, and we'll see you next week with search engine optimization with Bassam Gali. And have a great weekend, everybody. See you next week. Bye-bye, Karlyn. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.